morning, everyone. This is Infrared, and here you are. Where are we? Why are we beginning with this building that says Super City Wholesale Meat? We're in the Meatpacking District, or officially the Gansevoort Market Historic District. And this building across the street that says Super City Wholesale Meat was at one time a meat wholesaler. Now it looks like it's a Samsung distributor, and a whole new building has been built on top of what was just originally a two-story building. We are at the corner of 13th Street and Washington Street in the Meatpacking District, or the Gansevoort Market Historic District. Across the street is the Hotel Standard, or is it the Standard Hotel? And it straddles the High Line. And what would you expect to see adjacent to the High Line? Of course, a Tesla dealership. Let's just look down at some of the historic buildings here. So if you're in the market for a Tesla and you happen to be in the meat market district, here you go. How did I get here? The closest subway stop is 8th Avenue and 14th Street. It's 14th Street on the ACE, and it's called 8th Avenue on the L train. So the ACE and L at 14th Street and 8th Avenue. And then you have to walk about a half mile to get here. So the High Line begins. If you see this beige building in the distance with the water tower on top, let's get a closer look. But the High Line, which you can see curving around here, used to go directly into that building, and it ended there. One of my favorite street names, Little West 12th Street, coming up. I guess I should start by explaining what the High Line is. It was a freight railroad line. It was built in the 1930s by the New York Central, and it replaced freight railroad tracks that ran at street level. This was built in the 1930s. There are photos, and I think some of them are actually posted on the High Line, historical photos of what it was like when the trains ran in the street. And there's one photo showing a freight train being pulled by a steam locomotive, and the steam locomotive is preceded by a flagman or flagmen on horseback. So, no more tracks in the street, no more steam locomotives, and no more flagmen on horses. The High Line, we're walking north on Washington Street. The High Line ends across the street from that building where I told you it entered. That's at Bank Street. the High Line, the walkable part of the High Line, begins where we'll enter on 14th Street. You used to be able to enter at the very southern tip, that part that was just across from the building where it used to terminate, but that entrance is closed. It's a Wednesday morning, well, 19 minutes left till morning. This is Ash Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022, and it's very pleasant outside, mostly sunny and temperatures around the 50s. So, again, some of the historic buildings, including, don't know if you can see it from here, but across the street it says Amazon pop-up. So, brick and mortar Amazon in the Meat Market District. Well, let's take a walk on the High Line. The High Line, the walkable part of the High Line, will take us all the way north, a little over a mile to Hudson Yards, and then it will end near the new Moynihan Train Hall. Let's see how far we get. So, the logo for the High Line, the sign explaining that it is a city park, but funds come from the not-for-profit Friends of the High Line, which raised the money to build it in the first place. This first section of the High Line, the southernmost section, was the first to open in approximately 2009.
By the way, there was coming to the bathroom at the end of this.
Okay. Where are we? First, before we talk about the High Line structure itself, let's see what we can see. Little Island in the distance and Pier 57. And the steel arch in the distance across the West Side Highway it's an entrance to Little Island, but it was originally built to be the entrance to the pier for White Star Lines, and it is where the Titanic was supposed to have docked on its maiden voyage in 1912. I don't think it made it. So, a plug here for Chelsea Market, which I would recommend, and we covered on a walk, a different walk. Chelsea Market, a series of markets and food places that was built into the old Nabisco factory. Chelsea Market is also the home to New York One, and something else that we won't talk about. So, when designing the High Line, they wanted to keep some of the old rail infrastructure, or at least a replica of it. These rails could have been from the original freight line. These ties are not. I think these ties were supplied to the High Line at the time of its construction, because if they were the original ties when this was an active freight line, they wouldn't look nearly so good. The landscaping on the High Line, the vegetation is supposed to be native to this area and where the High Line eventually went under Riverside Park, and we'll see that shortly, or not shortly, on a different walk. So here, a walkway that connected two buildings that now comprise Chelsea Market, and the High Line itself used to go into the building across 10th Avenue, and railroad cars used to go inside the building, as they used to do at the building that's located at the southern terminus of the High Line. So you see, even when we're on a paved section, there are rails. So I saw this structure from the street earlier, and I was questioning what it was. And we won't read the sign right now. I guess we'll interpret it later. But anyway, you can see where the rails used to go into the building across the street. You can see where the brick covering up the railroad portal is a lighter color than all the surrounding brick facade. Now, here's the part where I don't know what was here originally. The iron or steel surrounding this area looks consistent with the rest of the High Line, but there's a viewing area here, a seating area, and a viewing area where you can look out at traffic going on 10th Avenue, going northbound on 10th Avenue. And there's a very pleasant skunk-like odor around here too. So this is 10th Avenue going north. 10th Avenue above 59th Street becomes Amsterdam Avenue. And those tallest buildings in the distance are Hudson Yards. Maybe you'll see them later. And here's a view of the High Line from the High Line. How's that possible? And just below, location of Artichoke Pizza, there's also one in Park Slope. Just to point out that these buildings here, a lot of them were built since the High Line was constructed. It really spurred a lot of residential and commercial growth. And this seating area here appeared in the opening credits of one season of Saturday Night Live. I think it was Kenan Thompson who was sitting here. Parks Patrol, benches, people lying on benches, people really enjoying the fact that it's 50 degrees out after we had some brutally cold weather earlier this week. I've seen very few ashes on this Ash Wednesday. And something is under construction here. I wonder what that is. Interesting benches. So, the High Line was constructed in the 1930s. It was featured in a National Geographic magazine in 1936. The larger article was about progress being made by railroads across the country It featured also the completion of construction of Pennsylvania Station in Newark, and it showed a photo of the High Line, and I think it may have had an historic photo inserted in there. Oh, I guess we're being forced off. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have to go back to the street and come back 3 blocks later at 23rd Street. All right, this is their, as an earlier sign said, their annual spring cleanup. So, oh my goodness, and many people working to make this part of the High Line even more beautiful in the next few weeks. So we have a structure you see in New York often. I don't think I've seen this in any other city. But you can park 4 levels of cars here, and they do, without constructing a brick and mortar garage. All right, let's get another view of the High Line.
Sorry, I can't talk to you right now.
And a view of the High Line workers before we detour to 23rd Street. It took me years to, I was confused for years about how they get the cars from the upper levels down to street level. It requires a lot of maneuvering. And now we have to go to 23rd Street to re-enter. So we have to walk 3 blocks north on 10th Street. I'm sorry, 10th Avenue. Thank you for yielding. We're now in the Chelsea Historic District. Infrastructure upgrades. New water mains. So, water mains are installed by the city's Department of Design and Construction. They're based on the needs of the city's Department of Environmental Protection, which runs the city's water and wastewater system. And the original water mains in this area were probably built, installed around 1870. Some of them might be from the early 1900s, but a lot of the drinking water infrastructure around here, the water mains were installed in 1870. Not far from here, in the West Village, on Memorial Day weekend in 2008, there was a huge water main break on West 10th Street in the West Village. And there was a press conference held in the middle of the day at the side of the water main break, where the person in charge was telling reporters that the water main which broke was installed in 1844, 2 years, just 2 years after fresh water was brought to New York City from upstate for the first time. And a reporter asked the person conducting the repair operation, "Why do you think the water main broke?" And he answered, "Because it's 166 years old." Or something like that. I don't know if I have the subtraction right. All right, we're at 23rd Street, the commercial heart of Chelsea, and hopefully, as the sign said, there is an entrance to the High Line, and it does appear to be open, but it is across the street. Yeah, why not? Okay. All right. Had to reroute a select bus route because there's a crane operation on this street. That may be partly what affected our walk too. Hopefully it won't. All right, literally we're back on track again. Oh. All right, this does say there are restrooms, and here's where they're located. So this sign says that the water fountain is out of service for the winter season. That's a standard practice with New York City parks. That's the only water fountain I've ever seen labeled that says it's closed during the winter. I think they generally turn the water fountains on Memorial Day weekend. If we can see to these two buildings, one in the center of the screen and the other just to its left. The one in the center of the screen has what looks like a very new water tower on top, and the one on the left has one not so new. If you look hard enough, you will see that every building, here's some, the tallest building here, there are two water towers, two wooden water towers, and even on this kind of brutal modern building, there's a water tower on top, just a traditional wooden water tower. It's part of the New York City building code. Any building that is taller than 6 stories must pump water up to a water tower. They have to have water tower. They have to have storage capability to serve their residents. And if for any reason the nearby water main has to be taken out of service for a short period of time, these buildings generally are able to provide water to occupants. And why is it any building that's higher than 6 stories? Because when the New York City water system was designed, it was designed to serve buildings by gravity without the need for pumping. In other words, get the water to the building without the need for pumping. And so the system was designed to have the water flow downhill for over 100 miles in some case, because the water comes now from as far away as about 30 miles southeast of Binghamton, New York. So there's gravity and the resulting water pressure that gravity provides enables the water to flow under high pressure up to the 6th floor of every building. So I think there are only 2 companies in the area that make water tanks. One of them, and I think the older and larger, is Rosenbach. Sometimes you'll see their names on the tanks. Sometimes you'll see their trucks, which, as part of the logo, unsurprisingly, is a water tower. A water tank. A painting of a wooden water tank. Well, here's 10th Avenue. I think this is a NYCHA housing complex across the street. It's also one of the few places in Manhattan where the east-west streets that go through that complex, they're public streets, but they curve as they go between 10th and 9th Avenues. Most crosstown streets just go in a straight line. Again, the railroad track. Okay. Usually there's some kind of plaque nearby that explains the public artwork. Oh, here we go. So, George Rickey, a sculptor who died in 2002. All right. So, and this was a largely industrial area. The High Line used to deliver materials to manufacturers and distributors here, but they also hauled away finished goods. Don't know if that's part of the earlier installation. By the way, if these were real if these were the original rails and ties on the High Line instead of the replicas, they would have more than one spike holding down the rail. So we are rounding the curve and are going to go through a portion of Hudson Yards. So we're at 30th Street and 10th Avenue. You can see the vessel through here. The vessel, I don't know how you characterize it, public art structure that was open to the public for climbing, but there were too many suicide attempts, so I think it's closed now. Here, Spain. Let's see. Don't know if you can see it down there, but Mercado Little Spain is, as the name implies, it's a Spanish market, you know, a big food hall. Check it out sometime. I think this is the Shed Performing Arts Center. So we have a choice now of following the High Line route, which will curve around Hudson Yards, or walking through the Hudson Yards Plaza. Well, let's come back to Hudson Yards. That's good. And then this sign makes it clear that you're leaving the High Line, so you're no longer our liability. You're Hudson Yards' liability. And here we have continuing the tracks and a switch. The High Line, even when it was an active railroad freight line, used to continue straight north. We curved around to the west, and we're walking west now. Sometime, I don't know when, the High Line was rerouted around what's now Hudson Yards. And I don't know. Oh, look, and there's a replica of a switch. I don't think that was here the last time I walked this portion of the High Line, which was maybe 3 years ago. Why is this largest, development in the city ever called Hudson Yards? Why is it called Hudson Yards? Well, let's see. This is 11th Avenue. This traffic is going south, even though we're looking north. These are the Long Island Railroad's storage yards. It's, I think, officially the John D. Kammerer West Side Storage Yard, but colloquially it's the West Side Yard. And looks like this may be the end of the High Line for now. So at one point we were able to walk all the way around the yards and end up at Moynihan Station, but this section appears to be closed. Ooh. I don't know if that building is going to be officially part of Hudson Yards or it's a different development. But if I can get close enough, all right. We'll come back. So here are some of the photos I was referring to earlier. This is a New York Central freight locomotive. So that would have been in the 60s. This is similar to the photo that was in National Geographic in the 1930s, showing how a flag person riding a horse had to warn pedestrians and motorists of a freight train coming down. So the High Line, once it was abandoned as an active line, then like on other abandoned railroad lines, vegetation starts to grow. All right, and to donate, press here. So, and you can see each of the Long Island Railroad storage tracks are numbered from south to north, 1 through, I can't see, it looks like it might be 20, 28, 29, maybe as many as 29 tracks. This was built in 1987. It was opened in 1987. In fact, it was dedicated on October 19th, 1987, which you might remember was Black Monday for the stock market. I think it was the biggest crash since the Depression at that time. Governor Mario Cuomo attended the dedication, and when an official of the MTA went to introduce him, the MTA official said, "I want to introduce Governor Mario Cuomo." So you saw the Long Island Railroad storage tracks, but that's only about half of their length. The other half is platformed over. It's still an active Long Island Railroad storage area, but a platform was built over this portion of the tracks to provide the foundation for constructing Hudson Yards. Since we can't walk the northernmost portion of the High Line, which would take us to Moynihan Train Hall, and since we did photograph Moynihan Train Hall on a previous walk, I guess we will go through Hudson Yards right now, and maybe we'll end our walk there. In order to serve the Hudson Yards area to provide transportation, the city, when Michael Bloomberg was mayor, paid for the construction of the extension of the number 7 line, which terminated in Times Square, to extend to Hudson Yards, 34th Street and Hudson Yards. It was the first time that a subway extension was paid for by the city since the 60s. Maybe the 50s. We are now in Hudson Yards. So if we have an accident, it's their fault. The shed. At the top of this building is an observation deck, an outdoor observation deck with a glass bottom, so you can see through to street level. It is billed as the highest observation deck in the Western Hemisphere. The shops. I went to Hudson Yards on the first day it was open, almost 3 years ago, and went into, I can't remember the name of the store now, but I was a little turned off by the $500 t-shirt, so I didn't do a lot of shopping that day. Oh, it was a Neiman Marcus. So, this is the the giant shawarma, or gyro. The vessel. It used to be open. You used to be able to walk all the way up to the top. Not anymore. I don't know if there are plans to reopen it. I don't know if there's going to be any signage telling us what the plans are, or just telling us, like, keep off. Yeah. How are we supposed to get over there? Anyway, well, look, let's go in here for a bit. I've barely been in here in 3 years. Okay. I mentioned Little Spain earlier. Mercado. So I think Louis Vuitton and Fendi gives you a hint of what's in store here. Cartier at the other end of this hall. Dior. And Rolex. Wow. Even more restaurants. Never eaten in any of the restaurants here, so I won't comment on them. Again, the vessel. and the shed. Look, a Starbucks. I don't think Jibs was here the last time I was here. Don't know what it is, but let's look. Seafood? I don't know. Oh. And a nice view of the yards, from which Hudson Yards gets its name. And then that's the Javits Center, New York's convention center, built in the early 1980s. And here's someone who doesn't want to attract attention. Okay. Oh. Well, maybe it is open to the public. Let's see. Thank you.
Pause. We are done. Pause, please. We are done.
Oh, I see. I guess you can enter the vessel, but just not go up.
Hi, come on in. Welcome.
Hi.
So just a friendly reminder, it's base level only. Take
Yes.
all the pictures you like, and then you're going to exit straight ahead, okay?
Okay. Is it ever going to reopen?
We don't
Don't know. Okay.
Yeah, but you could always go on the website.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So here we are, and this is what it looks like from the inside. There is an elevator. Look, the blue light. Okay. And this was our visit to the vessel. we're continuing to walk north through Hudson Yards.
Ahí no hay nada, Mónica.
Bella Abzug Park. Bella Abzug being a former congresswoman from New York. Did she run for mayor at some point? I don't remember. And we got quite an array of halal carts. And COVID testing. So, now let's enter one of the newest subway stations in the system, the 34th Street Hudson Yards stop on the number 7. A marauding gang of kids. So before we enter the subway, let's look at it. This nice canopied entrance. Let's just take a look at this building under construction. I don't know anything about this building or what it's supposed to be eventually, but it looks like it's just the core, and that the rest of the building will be built around it. I don't know. Anyway, this is a subsequent phase of Hudson Yards. And it's under construction. It'll be under construction for several more years. We'll come back when it's finished. Just want to see this apple sculpture across the street. Let's check out this park area. It's still Bella Absent Park. Construction workers at lunch. A view to and partially inside the Javits Center. Some kind of photo shoot here.
Eu vou estar aqui embaixo, olha aqui agora, a padaria está da
Then these are next phases of Hudson Yards. And here we go on the Hudson Yards subway station. There's a mosaic ceiling, artwork. Get all of it. Ooh. Watch your step. Anyway, for a big station like this, or what seems like a big station, there's no change booth here. There was another entrance about 2 blocks south. They must have a change booth there. All right. Well, interesting that as new as this station is, we see a number of escalators out of service. So, if this other escalator was working, we'd be able to get this neat visual effect, keeping the camera kind of on the same, well, at the same angle as the tiles are laid, and then it looks like the people on the next escalator are all leaning backwards. We're not going to see that today. again, this is 34th Street, Hudson Yards, on the number 7 train. The new beginning of the number 7. A new beginning. It's nice. Number 7.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Hudson Yards is the only new stop. There were preliminary plans to have a stop at the Javits Center about halfway between Times Square and Hudson Yards, but it didn't happen. Too expensive.
Times Square, 47th Street. Transfers available to the 1, 2, 3, A, C, E, N, Q, R, and W trains, and shuttle to Grand Central. Connection is available to the Port Authority bus terminal. This is an accessible station. The elevator is at the center of the platform. This is a Queens-bound 7 local train. The next stop is Fifth Avenue.
A field trip. Oopsie. The 7 runs pretty frequently, so even though it's just before 1 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, the train just left and the next one is in 5 minutes. So we're going to try something we've never tried before. Because it didn't exist until now. I think we're able to walk underground without paying an additional fare now and get all the way to 6th Avenue from here. But first, we have to find our bearings. So, We're heading west now towards 8th Avenue. So, we're walking towards 8th Avenue, where there's a free transfer to the AC&E. This passageway has been here forever, but it wasn't always a free transfer. It was until the early 80s. If you went from Times Square, you would exit through turnstiles just a little bit behind us. And then this area here was free. And then if you wanted to get onto the A series at the 42nd Street station here, you had to pay an additional fare. There would be a set of turnstiles right around here. So the turnstiles have been moved. And the sign says that Port Authority is to the right. So Port Authority being the city's biggest bus terminal. Let's see this artwork here. There are men's and women's restrooms here, but they're closed. The sign says closed midnight to 6 a.m., but I think since the pandemic, they've been closed all the time. So, we are going to start what was previously an impossible to complete walk underground from 8th Avenue and 42nd Street to Times Square, and then continue to 6th Avenue. The part that is newest about this will be the free transfer from Times Times Square to 42nd Street, Bryant Park at 6th Avenue. Until now, there had been no way to walk for free between Times Square and 6th Avenue. Underground, that is. Sure what that means. And this passageway was built in the 1930s with the construction of the AC&E train. You can tell by that mosaic for 8th Avenue and 7th Avenue. It's identical to one in the 7th Avenue station on the F and the G in Park Slope, Brooklyn, because that station spans between 7th and 8th Avenues, has exactly the same tiles. Here is where turnstiles used to be, and you would have to pay the fare to go from that passageway from 8th Avenue to enter the Times Square station. It was that way until the early 80s. And they've changed the signage in the station because the BDFM at 6th Avenue, that is what's newly free and expanded about this. And again, the BDFM looks like an afterthought. We'll just follow the signs. And follow the signs. walkway. And here's one sign where they haven't added the B, D, F, and M. Quick, call MTA 311. The Times Square station went through a major upgrading in the 90s, 80s. So this is the platform. This is 42nd Street on the NQ, R, and W. See, and again, the signage doesn't include the BDFM. We're now about to enter the shuttles portion of the station. But first, Record Mart since 1958. Alright, a sign of the times. This is a COVID testing vaccination site. Square was part of the original subway line in 1904, and here's some of the original tile work. Here's a shuttle pulling in now. This used to be common on subways up until the 80s, but you don't see it very often now, where one of the leaves in a doorway is stuck in the closed position. You can see the bumper block at the end of the track. Even though the track used to go all the way through, in 1904, this track would have been carrying a southbound train from Broadway, or 7th Avenue. Okay, this car has been retrofit to take on a lot of people during rush hour, I guess. People who just stand. I've never seen a car like this before. The multiple handles on the poles are also a retrofit. I think the platforms might have been realigned because up until now there was a wider gap between the doorway and the platform, and either the train operator or a platform conductor had to activate gap fillers so that people didn't step into the gap in the tracks. All right, this shuttle's going to depart. And that there's a green circle around the S. That means that this car was originally either on the number 7 line or the number 6, where they have a green circle to designate local trains. And now, for the first time, the new passageway connecting Times Square with the 42nd Street Bryant Park station. But before we leave the shuttle station, you see the 2 tracks here. There used to be a 3rd track. There used to be a 3rd track, but they eliminated it. I guess when they realigned the platforms, and they cleverly, even though this is a new wall, they made it look like it was the original 1904 wall. Because up until this latest configuration of Times Square, there was no wall here. You could just look through the columns to the next track, which no longer exists. The shuttle used to run 24 hours a day, but in a cost-cutting move, it doesn't operate overnight anymore. If you need to get from Times Square to Grand Central, you have to take the 7 train. Okay, look at the public artwork.
There's a train arriving on track 1.
I think there's a train arriving on track 1. And here we are at the Bryant Park station. This isn't the train we want. So, this is 42nd Street, Bryant Park. And this is a connection to the 7. And actually, from this station, you can connect to the 7 at 2 different stops. You can use this long-standing connection to the 5th Avenue stop, or you can go where we just came from and get the 7 at Times Square. That's nice to have choices. So I think this is a good place to end. 42nd Street, Bryant Park, on the B, D, F, M, and 7. Thanks for joining me. This is Infrared, and this is what you've been watching.